It's about controlling something we obviously have no control over. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And I love you, black man. My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film See You Yesterday.
What?
Yeah.
And back by popular demand from yesterday.
Well, from the theoretical yesterday, from
Yeah.
the days of yore. Catherine, I believe it was.
Catherine from Germany emailed us in and said, "Hey Matt, you mentioned Jamie so much that you guys should really bring her back on the podcast."
Yeah.
So Catherine, by popular demand,
I'm
joining
me from
us.
the future.
Whoa! Hi, Jamie.
I came back because I thought maybe you could use another white person to talk about this movie.
Yeah, I was going to say the elephant in the room on this one. But also, can you tell us how the 2020 elections go? Nah, actually, forget about it. Don't worry. Just leave
That's
it.
not great, guys.
Just
Oh,
get
dear.
out while you still can.
I'm Canadian now.
Jamie Walsh back by popular, specifically German demand. But
Thanks,
thank you so much for
Germany.
coming on.
Thank you. Well, I asked Matt to be on this podcast because I happened to be here when he was watching this movie,
Oh.
and I
That's
quite,
all.
I quite loved it. I like science fiction and I like time travel stories, and I thought that this one was a slam dunk.
Ooh,
Wow,
well,
you're jumping in.
Yeah, sorry. Oh no, I'm reeling it back. I got nervous.
You're from the future, and now you're just blaring through.
you've got 10 minutes to explain to us how this movie works. Is that what the deal is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before you do that,
Nick Jonas is
Just hold on,
president
just
in
hold on.
2020 also.
Wow.
I'm down for that. That means
Spoiler
That
alert.
means Priyanka Chopra is the first lady.
Sansa Stark is VP.
Oh, is that who Nick Jonas is married
No,
to?
she's
No,
VP.
She's VP. The
I'm-
character of Sansa Stark, they actually elect the
Yeah,
character Sansa Stark
Oh,
to
You're
be
correct.
vice
Is Nick
president.
Jonas married to Priyanka
yes,
Chopra?
Yes.
Okay, yeah,
They
cool.
in a whirlwind marriage. I don't know how I know that.
I don't know how I know. No, I do know how I know that. You know how I know that? I'm Indian, so we're obliged to know that.
You all,
Yeah,
you all know each other.
we all know each other exactly.
Wow.
If you'd like to get to know more about us, you
Sure.
can email us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com, as Catherine did from Germany, and request your favorite guest to come back on the show. Or you can hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod. I don't have any emails or tweets this week, so we're going to jump right into the podcast.
Yeah,
you
we-
ungrateful slobs.
Well, wow. Okay, I wasn't going to go that far. I was just going to say, dear listeners, I mean, you ask for guests, we get you guests. That's what we're trying to say.
I got nothing.
Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, See You Yesterday. Before Shahir, you brought this film to my attention, had heard hide nor hair of this film.
Oh, high no hair.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I was excited when I didn't watch the trailer. I just went into it. And I obviously Netflix started playing the trailer.
Right.
And I was like, hit play. Like trying to just sort of pull a Shahir and go into something blind.
How is pulling Shahir?
It's like a loose taffy.
A loose taffy. Gummy,
Yeah.
and if you leave it out in the
kind of
sun.
like mid pull,
Like
when
left
it's, like,
out-
still in that weird ribbon.
Yeah.
Left out in the sun, like an unloved flavor, but you grab it and you know what? You like it just fine.
There's no bad flavor of taffy.
I don't know what you guys are doing. I don't pick up taffy that's been outside. What do you guys? Is this a thing?
I mean, if you're outside, if you're in New England and there's taffy, you eat it wherever you're from. We're both from
Yeah,
New England.
ground-
Jamie and I are
ground-
from New
ground
England.
taffy.
You guys pick up ground. Okay, no, that's cool. I mean, white people do what white people do.
Yeah, ground taffy, sun taffy, Laffy taffy. It's all great. Salt water taffy
Beach taffy, clam taffy.
comes from the ocean.
Okay. Well, okay.
We don't-
Moving back
we
to
don't-
See You
we don't do
Yesterday.
that. We don't do
outside of the taffy universe that you guys are propagating here. I had heard about this film from South by Southwest. Obviously, this was produced by Spike Lee,
Yes.
who I am a big fan of. If you listen to the podcast, I talked about Spike Lee a lot. And the central conceit of this film, when I read about it probably a while back, kind of intrigued me, and I was like, this kind of feels. Because I think one of the running gags, and this may have been a Chappelle Show gag, it may have been a gag I've seen somewhere else on some other comedy bit, but the gag is time travel ain't for black people. If you're a black person and you and someone tells you there's a time machine, there are very few periods in American history that you want to actually go back to.
Right.
Like
So,
Chappelle.
that sounds like a Chappelle Show skit. So I was like, oh, I'm glad someone is actually embracing that concept, that kind of humorous but sad take about our world, and doing something with it. So I was very curious about that. And then I was very curious that this is the first time filmmaker by a man by the name of Stefon Bristol, who's very young.
Yeah. He was a crew member on Black Klansman.
Well, he's
Miscellaneous crew is what IMDb tells me.
He is mentored by Spike Lee.
Yeah.
His story about how he kind of got enlisted by Spike Lee is really interesting. He was a student at Morehouse College, which is Spike Lee's alma mater. You know, kind of made it known to the world that he wanted to be a filmmaker, and one of his professors at Morehouse put him in touch with Spike Lee, or he met Spike Lee at a Morehouse event, and kind of like really persisted and got, you know, first became an intern for Spike Lee.
Sure.
And then went on to NYU, where Spike Lee ended up being his professor. You know, Spike Lee teaches film studies at NYU. And my favorite part about Stefon Bristol as a person that I'm kind of, you know, a person I don't know, but I'm kind of getting to know via these stories, is that Spike Lee hated his short film.
Really?
Yeah, hated it.
Wow.
That's the way Stefon described it. He said his short film was unoriginal, tired, and played out. And Stefon, being as persistent as he was, said, okay. And he went back to the drawing board and rethought it. And he came up with this, a short version of See You Yesterday, among many of the films that he was making.
Okay.
Pitched, played it. Spike Lee enjoyed it. It went to a lot of festivals. And then eventually, after all that persistence, Spike Lee called him one day and said, hey, would you like me to produce the feature version of this?
So there's been 3 versions of this or 2 versions of this?
2 versions of this.
Okay, so sorry, he did a short. Spike hated it. He went back and did a short of this film. Spike loved it, and then he said, "Hey, do you want me to produce your feature?" Okay,
which is pretty awesome if you think about, you know, Spike Lee basically saying, "I will produce your first feature film," and helping Stefon get a Netflix deal.
Yeah,
that's pretty extraordinary and a pretty great sign of Spike Lee's faith in Stefon.
No, so he co-wrote this with someone named Frederica Bailey. Do you know anything about?
She was an NYU graduate as well.
Cool.
So they both met at NYU, and I believe she was in the graduate writing program.
Awesome.
Which is what I don't know a lot about her. Again, this is both their first films. This is the first film for a lot of people involved in this thing. But I guess I was thinking a lot about time travel movies in the build up to watching this film, and I was thinking about how time travel, in a way, outside of maybe the film The Time Machine, or is it Jules Verne who wrote The Time Machine? Outside of the adaptation of that, which there's been many of, Time Machine is kind of a great low budget science fiction gateway, in that ultimately, you know, you can do the ticks, you know, you can represent the technology, but it's not like flying into space where you have to like create an entire environment. Time travel allows you to like be in the world you're in, just in different time zones.
Unless you travel famously low budget.
I have a funny connection to that film Primer. But,
also like you even look at things that aren't even science, aren't like they're sci-fi, but they're sci-fi adjacent things like Groundhog Day, where like there's not even a machine that's having it happen. It's just what's happening.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no technology to it. Now, Back to the Future famously has a piece of technology at the beginning, but ultimately, the thing I love about Back to the Future is there's a film about a guy meeting his parents, right? Like meeting his parents before he was born. And that's what that film's about. Of course, it's set in 1950. There's a throwback to that film in this film.
Well, actually, I mean, Stefon's favorite films, at least he's quoted as, is Do the Right Thing and Back to the Future Part 2. So if you take those 2 films
and put them together, you might get this. Yeah, Mookie goes Back to the Future. That kind of makes sense. Mookie has been back to the. We've seen Mookie, who is Spike Lee's character in Do the Right Thing, has appeared in one more of Spike Lee's movies. I think it was Red Hook Summit, which I haven't seen, but I love that character. I've seen Do the Right Thing maybe 20 or 30 times, and I totally get it. But I guess I was thinking, to your point, is films like Primer, films like Time Lapse, which came out a few years ago, really low budget time travel movies that basically allow you to do science fiction, but without having to do like big technological science fiction, which I think is fun.
The movie aspects of science fiction, which kind of it's funny. I like and thinking about this movie, and I think we'll get to more of this point. But I think a lot of science fiction movies like aren't very good, but the aesthetics are what brings them forward. Like or there are many times where I've seen a science fiction movie where I think, God, this isn't very good. And then like there was one, Oblivion, the Tom Cruise movie. Oh. Like there's this beautiful moment where he like tumbles into this like ruined room, and it's like the most beautiful room I'd ever seen. And I was like, oh my God, someone worked so hard. And this just sucks. I feel like that happens a lot where the art direction of science fiction trumps the modern film adaptation of science fiction. This movie I felt was not that case. The writing I loved.
Yeah, if anything, and I'll sort of get into it a little bit, but well, it's actually not the same thing. I think the set design and actually the costume design and sort of like all of the physical attributes of this film were very, very well done. I liked them a lot. I liked the aesthetic of the time backpacks. Honestly, everything
except for the Amazon goggles.
Yeah, the goggles they wore were literally and the only reason I know this, although Jamie caught onto it too, it's the same goggles that I literally used for my WDI thing. Like, dude, they're just like you spray paint them, but it's the exact same. Like, they're like $7.99 goggles, and that's whatever. Who gives a crap?
But my point here is that we tend to think as filmmakers that science fiction is a genre you should stay away from.
Yes,
as your first, if you're trying to do a low budget film, but in essence, time travel is actually a great narrative device, which is inherently, if used in the right way, cheap. Yeah, exactly. And Primer is kind of a great example. Primer was made for something in the vicinity of $6,000, less than $6,000, and Primer is an interesting, well, I guess a fascinating example because it's a movie I've watched like 4 or 5 times and I still don't get it every time I watch it. Every time I watch it, I feel like
it did great.
Every time I watch it, I feel like I've got it, and then I get to the end, I was like, wait, no, I don't got this. But anyway, that was like this fascinating realization to me, is that time travel has this kind of capacity, and even Back to the Future again, is once you get over the time travel kind of technological side of it, and Lebanese people running at you for plutonium, it is about a high school kind of rom-com drama kind of comedy.
Yeah.
And it was only really watching this I was like, time travel is that wonderful device that we don't think about in that way.
It makes for good storytelling because it makes us really think about the structure of the story in a way that maybe a lot of writers might forget to do sometimes.
Time travel is ultimately about cause and effect, right?
Yes, yeah.
Except for the Avengers Endgame.
That's what I was going to say. I mean,
I thought that they did a great job of, figuring out how to not worry that much about it, and then make a joke about how they weren't going to worry that much about it.
I mean, we've now seen, sort of in rapid enough succession, 2 very different time travel movies in the last month and a half, being Avengers Endgame and See You Yesterday. I really dug this film's, I guess I want to say like a motive core, because what it came off, and this is what I watched the trailer after the fact,
right? And
the trailer makes it kind of look like an action sci-fi drama a little bit, sort of.
The trailer's a different feel from the movie in a lot of ways, but it's a good trailer.
And the movie, which I'd never seen anything like it, and I think is vastly important to create, literally felt like the evolution of Spy Kids set in, and that's not an insult.
Yeah.
Set in a more realistic setting with racial violence,
with a social conscience.
Yeah, it's Spy Kids with a social conscience. That's a better way of putting it. Because the writing is good, but it also feels very kiddie.
Yeah.
But then it's these kids are this is the thing that these kids deal with. So there's the juxtaposition, at least it feels from an outsider's perspective who hasn't experienced this, very like lighter, childlike dialogue, and then like life works, it for these people just straight into just people being awful. And I'd never seen something that took like a light sci-fi premise and then went I wouldn't even say went dark, went real, and still didn't lose the emotive core of what the movie was doing. I did not expect the film to take the emotional turn that it did.
Okay.
And even after watching the trailer, if I had watched that first, I still don't think I would have thought it would tightrope balance those 2 tones that I just talked about as well as it did.
I think if I had seen the trailer before the movie, I would have been a little confused because the graphics on the movie are such a strong presence. It's almost like an additional character at that point. And yeah, the aesthetics of those don't quite match up to the movie, in my opinion.
You're talking about the VFX. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Forgive me, I don't necessarily know the right word, but like
visual effects are computer generated added things. Special effects are anything that is in the in like being shot on set, i.e. if the backpacks moved or lit up or did anything on set, that's sort of a special effect, or if you have like squibs or like smoke, like that sort of thing. But the VFX in this, that's I think where I got a bit of the Spy Kids vibe. Like it was like anytime it showed a screen, I was just like, and that brought me back to like, Spy Kids, Disney Family, like a weird sort of like, there's just a random wormhole poorly comped onto that screen in this very serious scene, and I'm like, I don't know how to feel.
Well, tell us, before you tell us how to feel, tell us what it's about.
Absolutely. IMDb says, best friends, CJ and Sebastian build a pair of time machines and use them in order to save the life of CJ's brother.
Very accurate, I would say, as far as IMDb synopsis go. And I guess you had an interesting thing because you said Jamie had some great points that changed your mind about the film, and I'm curious what those are off the bat.
I don't want to get into it quite yet because it's
literally the end of the movie.
Okay, we're gonna get into the end of the film, and I have some notes there about the end of the film. But I mean, what were your overall impressions of the movie?
You want to start?
Yeah, Jamie, you're our guest.
You're our guest?
Be our guest.
Oh, God, that's kind of not fair. All right.
Do the hard work for us, guest.
Okay, well, so it's funny because, like, my very immediate reaction when the movie started, the first thing I saw was the goggles, and I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. But, like, I immediately kind of got past and then when the Michael J. Fox scene, like I liked the dialogue, but like I remember picking up little costume things where I was like, I don't know, and then very suddenly I was just hooked in. I thought the actors were so genuine that you can't help but just kind of forget to criticize and start to just kind of travel with these kids.
Yeah.
And as the story went on, I was totally shocked when things, took such an intense and tragic turn. And like as the movie was going on, at one point, there was the buildup of the scenes were happening, and I said to Matt, like, I can't take another sad thing. If this doesn't end well, I'm not sure I'm gonna make it. But of course, that's kind of the point of the movie. It's about more than just their one story, and you can't help but kind of. I found myself juggling like the plot of the movie and then also thinking like, oh, but like she's got to get to MIT. She's got that full ride. And like they always talk about the expo that they're supposed to be in. And so you're still kind of trying to balance these teenage goals with this horrible thing that they're faced with. And you cannot watch this movie and not think about the reality of young Black teens and children and families in America, because they do have to balance being a kid, a normal person, a gifted person, and then the outrageous horror of what they have to deal with on a regular day-to-day basis.
Yeah, the ping pong effect of it's kind of what I was saying before. It's like when I was watching it, especially after the first 15 minutes where it's like they're in high school and they're like science nerds, and then there's Michael J. Fox as their science teacher, and he's talking about time travel, and he goes, "Great Scott!" and you're like, "Ah!"
He's wearing a fun tie.
And then later on, as they're going, and you're like, "Oh!" At first, I was like, "This is going to be about them trying to get into college."
Yeah.
Which
could still be a really interesting. There's a lot you can dig in on there and still make a movie.
I mean, that is. I think, a bit of my either privilege or ignorant showing of situations of young Black teens in America that I didn't even see this sort of coming until the turn of when CJ's brother is gunned down by the police for literally doing nothing.
A crime he didn't commit.
Yeah, right. Literally the crime of walking. And then when that took the turn, I mean, obviously because it had been a time travel story from the beginning, I was like, oh, they're gonna go back and try to fix this. Like I knew that was sort of coming, and then I guess, and we'll get into it later, but what I didn't see coming was how the film would end, because again, the kiddish nature, and again, not a detriment to the film, just it does feel. I got to go Spy Kids. Like, I thought it would go a different way or do different things. And I think because the tone kept lulling me back into it.
Well, because there's a lot of humor and like there's a lot of tenderness to it, and something that I like and I commend the actors and the casting directors on. They're kids. They feel like kids. A lot of times I watch a movie and I'm like, that person is 30.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to work to get into this narrative. And I was like, yeah, you're juniors? Like, that was easy for me to completely believe.
Yeah. What about you, Sheer? So when you were, I mean, you're obviously a fan of Spike Lee. He didn't direct this, of course, but
I was curious to see his, the people that he is kind of endorsing, and I think I saw this at the exact right time that I needed to see this because, as you know from last week's review, we just did John Wick, and I watched John Wick 2 and John Wick 3 kind of back to back. So I just needed, which was really, I mean, you listen to last week's review, but it was rough for me. But
Matt was fine.
But this was just a film I needed, and I think to the point that you guys both made, this film is so effortlessly charming.
Yeah,
these two actors who I listened to a podcast conversation with Eden Duncan Smith and Dante Crislow, are best friends. They've been best friends their whole life.
Really?
So they're actually great friends. Like the way Eden described it in this podcast was that they've known each other since birth, kind of thing.
So cool.
And they were cast in the short film, and then they were cast in the feature film together, and then Spike Lee and Stefon really fought for them to be in this Netflix film. So for them to come together again in this film,
they were both so good too.
They're so good. They're so effortlessly charming and lovely and fun to watch. And it was like, and I think to me the thing there is this film has weaknesses, no doubt about it. It's a first-time feature film. If you want to get into the mechanics of time travel, there are problems with the mechanics of time travel.
Yeah, most time
travel movies do. And this one has like low-budget-itis in certain points. Like
and mostly the VFX, honestly.
I mean, you feel the kind of there's that sort of push and pull between the ambition of what the filmmaker wants to do with the limitations that they're kind of putting upon themselves. Yeah. But ultimately, all of that gives way because of two things for me. One is that it's so effortlessly likable. I just loved being with these two kids, and I loved everything about their interaction. It felt very genuine. It felt very earned. There's that sort of intangible quality that chemistry can kind of give you.
It kind of makes you want to see, like, how'd you two become friends?
Yeah,
because they're just two geniuses that are like hanging out together, and you can feel the organic growing up nature of them.
You can feel that friendship. It feels warm. It feels genuine, and it never feels forced in any way. And then secondly, I think the other point that you two raised that was really kind of striking for me is that, I completely agree. At first, I kind of, it looks and feels like a Disney after-school kind of like time travel romp.
Yeah.
But it speaks and talks like Do the Right Thing, which is probably exactly why those two, I think the time at which when it was most jarring and I didn't enjoy that was when Michael J. Fox says Great Scott. I was like, oh boy, come on. But what I loved was later on when they start, having an interaction, they actually feel like Brooklyn teenagers, like they feel genuinely like Brooklyn kids who are dealing with life in Flatbush, who are Guyanese, Guyanese second generation family members who are living with their grandparents, and I love how grown up the film feels in those parts, how their issues that they're dealing with are, and not even before we get to the school, not the school shooting, but the shooting of her brother.
Yeah.
But like the interpersonal relationship. So this other character that who she may have slept with once. I felt like what I loved was that he says you gave it up or something like that, and she was like I would ever give it up for you. There was not this sort of chastising that you get in Disney films where it's like sex is sacred. I feel like she's had sex with before, and she was like, and it's not like I would never give it up for you, and what I loved about that
teens,
it was like legitimately like grown up.
Yeah.
And I just love that. And then now I think I will agree, the mechanics of the time travel and how the loops work in this film get a little muddy and get a little messy and mechanically, speaking as armchair scientist about time travel, they kind of don't make sense to me because time travel, like we've established, is all about cause and effect.
Yes.
But don't care.
And they do enough fast talking where they throw out the sciencey words where the theater major me was like, okay, sure, it's in the backpack. Okay, let's go. Like I totally.
You know what carries that is two things. One is the sort of effortless charm of casting. In this film, and it's not just casting these two actors, but it's casting the location, so it feels like these two actors are in a real place.
Yeah.
But it's also about the emotional weight of what they're trying to achieve, which is honest and true and has a point of view and has something to say about the world we live in. Now, the danger of kind of doing this kind of thing is that it can feel preachy and didactic and somewhat clumsily handled, like where the message becomes overpowering. But I think there's enough sincerity to what the material actually is here. There's enough of a voice of reason and of a point of view with what is trying to be said, which is very obvious. And again, we live in America where police shootings of young African American men in particular is a very everyday reality that we all kind of understand. Mm-hmm. This film was written around the time. The short film was made prior to the death of Eric Garner and Michael Brown, which kind of sparked off the Black Lives Matter movement. But once that kind of came into the ether, that was, Stefon's kind of prompt was, this needs to change. And I think underlying all this, the central conceit of, can I use time travel to reverse this death, is powerful. Mm-hmm. And ultimately that's the radical act of this film. And that's why I think it's so delightful and challenging in interesting ways, and has something to say, and difficult, and again, clumsy in places, but entirely worthwhile.
I think the clumsiness is in all the right places, because one thing, and it's a tough balance with time travel films. Like this film is not about time travel, and it was very clear once it got moving.
Good science fiction is never about spaceships. About the it's never.
The great thing, and I think weirdly enough, the youthful spy kid aesthetic of these backpacks time travel. The second that was serious for all the characters,
I love that they were like the cutest kids' backpacks. Too.
And I was like,
the costume designer crushed it.
And I was just like, oh, well, okay. If everyone's accepting this, then I accept. Because again, I've talked about it a million times on the show. I am a stickler for a movie setting up not only its rules and following its rules, but setting up what I need it to tell me what it thinks is important.
Right.
It does not think the technobabble is important. It knows it's a small sort of necessary thing to kind of like be like, and now we're talking about the real thing we're talking about. Like It does that, but it never lasts on it. It never tries to relish in sort of the sci-fi of it. It's a human story that happens to have fantastical elements. And and sort of when you get past that, so even getting past the technical aspects of time travel, the story I'm always a sucker for is like, if you could go back and change a thing, would you, or could you?
It's what Michael J. Fox says. What would you change? Is his question to her at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, and as we've sort of seen, and no matter what sort of style of time travel you slice in any of your films, one of the long-standing traditions in time travel narratives is you're gonna fuck shit up.
Right.
And no matter what you do, like, I don't think there's really been one where it's like everything's okay.
Right. You know what? No one's ever done the Hitler paradox in a time travel movie that I can think of.
I'm sure there is one, just not a good one.
Right.
That's a good point. No one's killed Hitler except for Inglourious Bastards, but that's not time travel. That's just revisionist.
That's cinema is time travel.
Yeah, we never saw what happened.
But I think because that's an interesting. What you raised is an interesting point. Is that the technology always leads to a human emotional story.
Yeah.
And no, I can't think of a situation where time travel is actually used for for the greater good.
I mean, Terminator 2.
Endgame.
I guess.
Endgame. Like, those are sort of big world-ending things.
Yeah.
No, but that's...
I hate myself right now.
Yeah. No, but that's sort of... That's... Even with those things, those are like the time travel goals, but Terminator 2... You don't really care so much about Judgment Day as John and Sarah making it.
And the plan, it's not that the plan is to use time travel for good. He time travels and then ends up doing Is that what happens?
No, Terminator 2. Basically, again, it's
Terminator 2.
It's that. Well, and Terminator, I think, basically uses time travel as a sort of an initial device, and then kind of moves on.
But he's doing it to be a
Actually, I take back what I said about the Hitler thing. Is that Terminator and Terminator 2
are reversed? He sends him back from the future. Never mind.
To kill the baby. So it is a Hitler.
Yeah, but it's Hitler for robots.
Yeah,
that he's coming back to kill.
Yeah. The robots are doing the Hitler paradox.
No, the robots are the first ones to do because they're the ones that aren't afraid.
Yeah, they're not going back to try and save someone they know. They're going back to
they're going back to kill the person that's going to kill them.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go. If you want real time travel that's ethical, be a robot, a murderous one if you can.
I don't know if robots have ethics.
Oh, well, Isaac Asimov would disagree with you.
Well, no, there's the 3 laws of robotics, but that doesn't mean that a robot is specifically ethical. We've been doing a lot of extra sci-fi stuff. We could go down that horrible rabbit hole. Let's not.
I like Terminator 3 where he marries a veterinarian.
That one's not even canon anymore. The last 3 Terminator movies aren't even canon anymore.
You can just retcon your writing. Time travel, it's gone.
Yeah, time travel.
Okay, See You Yesterday. Obviously, the thing here is using the time travel mechanic to correct an incident of police brutality. And I think we've all kind of given our opinions here. If you haven't seen the film at this point, you should go and see the film. You should basically sit on your couch and see the film, presuming you have a Netflix account. But I think the thing we should really just...
Who are you?
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you don't have a Netflix account, we've said this before, we'd love to hear from you because you'd be the unicorn.
You live in a shack somewhere.
But here's the thing. If someone listens to this podcast, say a year from now, after Disney Plus and all this other stuff, the landscape could be entirely different, and it could sound so like we're like what? Oh yeah, I remember that thing from the mail.
That's spooky.
The Betamax of online
I hope
streaming.
not, but
No,
Disney is president in 2020.
If See You Yesterday is anything to go by, because I don't think See You Yesterday would ever make it as a Disney film. But regardless, maybe I'm wrong about that.
No, you aren't wrong. That's correct.
Yeah,
I think we should talk specifically about spoilers here because the mechanics are so devoted to spoilers.
Can we focus for a second on that Disney comment?
Okay, sure.
I think that Disney couldn't make this film because this film does not necessarily end hopefully. Disney needs hope, and there's a distinct thread of tragedy in the ending of this, and they thread it through the whole movie with one of my favorite things is that at one point, they feature the side of Malcolm X Boulevard a lot. Mm-hmm. Although now I'm confused about location because I think the
Malcolm X Boulevard is in Harlem, but this is in Flatbush.
But when they're trying to get there, I could be completely misremembering here, but at one point they're short on time and she yells, "Oh, geez, we're not even to Malcolm X yet." Right. And I was like, "Oh God!"
I don't know my Brooklyn geography well enough.
I googled it to check. He was assassinated in 1965,
right in Harlem.
And so to Audubon, me, I was shot back. This story, time travel, goes back that far. Right. This story is about the infinite amount of times African Americans have tried to get equality and peace and nonviolence and justice that continually fail. And this is her continuing to try that in a science fiction setting, but to me, and Matt, I think that's how kind of we ended the movie with saying this is a metaphor for that struggle. And I love the ending because that's where it hits me. But it's not hopeful. I don't, right? Yeah. And at first, my first thought was is she gonna die? And then I was like, that's not the point. Right. It's that
open box
it's
ending.
That she could potentially go back an infinite amount of times, and how many times is it going to take?
But that's sort of where I was. So when I finished this movie, I had my initial gut reaction, as I tend to do with these endings, as people seem to know at this point, where I'm just like, "Thanks, movie, for not answering a damn thing." And I was sort of cool, I just watched a whole thing that I really enjoyed, and then the end. So let's full spoiler here, real quick. She never quite gets the result that she is looking for entirely. She does manage to correct one faux pas death of her friend.
Well, as Sebastian says, she made it essentially the end of the movie. They're at the point where it's like they never went back in the first place.
Right, and
her brother has been killed.
But throughout this, when she goes back the first time or the second time, Sebastian dies instead, and then it gets all weird. And there's a lot of sort of time travel mumbo jumbo that gets back to them sort of resetting, and then at the end of this film, film, she finally decides to go back again and try again, even though we've all learned in this film and many other films that time travel in that regard is kind of most times is fruitless. So I initially had my like cool, like great. But then, Jamie,
he's been cranky.
But then, honestly, Jamie brought up, and I'm going to try to paraphrase this, and then you can actually say it, unless you want to start with what you said.
No, I don't necessarily remember exactly what I said.
It's along the lines of what you just sort of recanted here. Is the reason why this movie ends like this, with just her running back again to try to stop this murder, the murder of her brother, is thematically honest with the source material. And that is that no matter, like, again, how many times have African Americans tried to, further, better fix these sort of these things, and how many times has the world just, said no. And because of that, and because of this specific, what this story is actually about, which is sort of the constant fight and the constant setback, but still fighting. I think the ending itself, while definitely not hopeful, is very true. And I mean, if there's anything hopeful about it, it's not what's happening in the actual end of the film, but it's the fact that she is still trying.
And maybe hopeful is not the right word. I don't want to be too nihilist about it, but
she is still trying.
Yeah, and like people will always try, but like I don't think the point is that like it's never gonna happen. I think that the point is that like it's been happening for so long.
And so you really did. You turned my my end of the movie frown upside down, because I really do believe that that the use of this style of ending is thematically true to the entire point of the movie.
So I want to do two things, which is, one, I want to play you a clip from the director talking about specifically the ending of the film.
Oh, okay.
And he's because he has received a lot of criticism of the ending of the film. And so let's hear what Stefon Bristol has to say about the ending of the film.
Sure.
That ending is up for everyone's interpretation. But to have the ending wrapped up in a bow like that, it would be an offensive oversimplification of why this movie's been made. Of a tragedy that's still happening today. And I refuse to simplify it. Explanation of the ending is basically, I want you to do something about it. You're pissed off that the movie ended that way? Well, I'm pissed off it's still happening. When CJ is running towards the camera, she's running to you to seek help. That's what she's doing. I'm challenging everybody who sees this film to actually get up from your couch and do something about it. The end.
So I think you kind of hit the hammer right on the head there in terms of what the messaging of the ending. And I think there, I think if we listen to the podcast, I've always kind of I guess advocated for being challenging in your final moments if you can, and the power of open interpretations to narrative conclusions. And I think this is one of them. I will admit, the emotional catharsis of the film kind of is swept, it leaves you kind of like swept off your feet. You're not, there is no emotional catharsis, but that is the point of this movie. And I think that's a sort of powerful testament to how narrative cinema can actually work and transform your way. I mean, the way I think about it as well, if you're Spike Lee's, mentee, the ending of Jungle Fever, when like the resolution. If anyone's seen Jungle Fever, it's been a while since I've seen it. But Wesley Snipes gets into an interracial relationship, and the thread that's run through the entire film is about the rise of crack cocaine in Brooklyn. And at the very end of the film, a strung-out woman kind of comes to him, and he grabs her, and he screams out loud, and that's the end of the film. Because ultimately, while his sort of interpersonal tragedy has been resolved, the greater tragedy of what's happening in Brooklyn continues. And that's the sort of unusual ending that I think Spike Lee is very good at. He's done a few times. And I think this is a really good example of that. And I think yeah, sure.
So he screams at her. I haven't seen Jungle Fever. He screams at her like
so good.
like get away from me, or screams at her in unison with the sort of predicament she's in.
It's an amazing moment. He grabs her, he embraces her, and he screams out loud.
Okay, I see.
As a sort of a scream of rage and why is this still happening kind of thing.
Okay, got it.
So yeah, no, I think there is that challenge of the ending, but I love a filmmaker who lays down a challenge, and I love a filmmaker who is willing to back up that challenge with a thematic through line that actually makes sense to that challenge.
Yes, and it's again, it goes back to this entire film is of one mind. Like it never lies to you about sort of what it is. It does, I will even say playfully dip its toe into other sort of genre pieces. Again, sort of youth, sci-fi, youthy type things. Youthy.
But that's what the millennials are calling it?
Yeah, why not? I mean, technically, I am the world's second oldest millennial. So
who's the first?
That would be Davey Stevie Dave.
Oh, okay. Good point.
But I digress. Shout out to Davey Stevie Dave.
Nobody knows what that means.
Yeah.
I don't care. I do. And you do.
No, but I mean like on the internet.
Yeah, so are we nobodies now? Let's back it up.
I don't want to be.
I'm in the room and I don't know what you guys are talking about.
It's fine. Jumping back to it. I do think that I'm trying to figure out if there is a film that is not set in, or let's not even say set, that is not dealing with a real world issue that has an open ending that I like.
Oh, that okay. Well, I was like with you on all 3 points until you got to that I like.
That I feel like is a justified, effective ending, and I'm wondering if the ones that I do think that work, is it because they thematically relate to something that is the overall core of the film?
I feel like something just came out with an open ending because
there's lots of films with open
there's tons.
Yeah.
Yes, but like I was just reading about like the first time that happened, and I can't remember what the movie was.
So I've got an essay that I want to pull up about the first time, the one of the first times this happened.
Maybe you were the person that I read it from.
Was it the 400 Blows?
No.
Okay.
Never mind.
Okay.
No, it was a survival movie, and I think it took place in like the Canadian wilderness, and it's this group, and at the end,
yes, the Gray.
No,
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
It's not the Gray.
Well, the Gray has an open ending as well.
The end is a group of people who have gone through the story together, and it's them waiting to either be rescued or killed. They don't know.
Oh, yeah, I do know the film, and because I know the director, so it's going to take me a couple of degrees of separation to figure out what that film is. But the director is the guy who made The Brother from Another Planet, and I will get to that while I talk to you about this other thing.
Okay, sorry.
Because I can actually see the image in my head. I just can't think of the title, and I can't think of the.
I wrote it down.
The director's name is John Sayles, and the film is called. Oh God. Okay, no, I'm going to come back to that.
This is why you want Shahir on your trivia team.
The director's name is John Sayles, by the way.
Okay.
You want Shahir with his laptop.
I'm going to see if I can get there without it. But I want to pull up. So for Film 101 text, everyone reads Thompson and Bordwell. Thompson and Bordwell they write Film 101, an introduction that is kind of like the book that every Film 101 student reads. And they have a specific chapter devoted to open endings versus closed endings, as they call it. And they this is an essay that I found that was written by Richard Raskin, which refers to that. Where they talk about how a film that is left open-ended is assumed to have a weak closure, but Bordwell and Thompson suggest that, and this is where they quote Bordwell and Thompson, most classical narrative films display strong degrees of closure at the end, leaving no loose ends resolved. These films seek to end their causal chains with a final effect. We usually learn the fate of each character, the answer to each mystery, and the outcome of each conflict. Ending that can be relatively open, as our example is the 400 Blows, is one where the plot presents a story of events that leave us uncertain to the nature of the final consequence. Reading Bordwell and Thompson's argument a little bit further, not only are we in the dark, and they're referring to the end of the 400 Blows.
Yes.
Have you guys seen the 400 Blows?
No.
Francois Truffaut's film. The final frame of the film, it's about a young boy who runs away from a foster home, and it's sort of his misadventures through the French countryside. The
Tintin.
final... Yeah, okay. The final shot of the 400 Blows is Antoine Dunal, the character, runs to the beach. He finally makes it to the ocean side, which he's been talking about forever. And again, this was 1960-something. The film freezes on his face and pauses as he looks back and almost kind of clocks the camera. And the thing was that no one quite understood what that ending meant. But this is, Bordwell and Thompson talk about, is that not only are we in the dark as to Antoine's immediate future, but we are even left uncertain to how to interpret the look on his face as the film ends. This can be demonstrated by the fact that the readings of Antoine's facial expression in the freeze frame shot diverge considerably and range from happiness and hope to uncertainty and disillusionment. So what Bordwell and Thompson are saying is the potential of the open ending is the multitude of possibilities, and the idea that the ending ultimately exists within the viewer. Now, the final freeze frame look to the audience has kind of been done many times before.
Sure.
The 400 Blows is kind of
normally with I said woo la 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 la.
Yeah, well, no, that's kind of a closed ending though.
It is, but I'm just saying the style of freeze frame look at the camera.
But we've talked about open endings a lot. Like The Lobster is a film.
I need to watch it again. I'm not even comfortable bringing it up as an example
don't ruin
anymore.
The Lobster for me. I keep forgetting to watch it.
But we have talked about open endings a lot. I guess my frame of reference is that open endings are about the potential beyond the existence of the frame, and open endings can be a sort of. I guess the way to sort of think about it is the Schrodinger's cat ending. It is alive and dead both simultaneously, and I think that can be beautiful and wonderful. And I think bringing it back to this film, it is a wonderful example of what the possibilities this film is exemplifying. But as you've said, Jamie, it's also a somewhat disillusioned ending. In a sort of a beautifully, delightful flight of fancy that has kind of been slowly working its way towards this tragedy that is, and I think what we're saying at the end here is the tragedy is inescapable. And if you look at any, metric about police brutality and police violence and the sort of sense of hopelessness that comes from a community that has experienced this, that is an entirely understandable point of view.
Totally accurately communicated. But I like his dialogue. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay.
I liked his dialogue. Stefon's about she's running to us. She's running to the viewer, and it has to change within society. It can't just be this time traveler.
But that is why this film's ending and this type of ending in this film works so well. There's, I think, again, the reason why I don't like a lot of these endings is because a lot of these endings are not based in the core of what the film is trying to tell you or do. There's a lot of things that the movie is going along, teaching you its rules, telling you what's important. A lot of times, weirdly enough, like survival or horror movies will kind of do this. This isn't sort of the same thing, but like a non-ending being like that you never understand what's going on and everybody sort of dies, and then it's like, well, cool. Like or if like I'm trying to think of another sort of non-ending that's not lobster related, but like. If it's going along and telling you everything, like, this is important, we're going to take the time and really get you to know this, this, and this. And then, oh, no, this character needs to do this specific thing in order to save the person that they love, right? And now, it's funny, take that in a vacuum, which a lot of movies could do, and do an open ending. Does that person save them, or do they not save them? In an open ending not really connected with the theme of the movie, I think it's bullshit. In a movie like this, where it connects with the actual theme of what's happening and what the film is trying to say and all of the things that the director just sort of said, I 100% think it's the best possible ending.
The alternative ending could have been panning out, and again, we're in spoiler territory.
We've been for quite some time.
Just checking. The alternative ending would have been, Calvin disappearing in the alley,
right?
And I would have leapt out the window. Like that would have been completely tragic with no feeling.
Yeah.
Like the closure would have been too harsh. And I retract my hope comment. Like he makes it different. He makes it about the struggle and in a way that suggests action is still going on.
Yeah. Yeah,
and I think it fundamentally it works, and it's challenging, and it does work.
I still don't think Disney could do this though.
No, they can't.
I think the film you were referring to earlier, and again, this is not just me trying to get good at trivia, but was the film called Limbo?
I think it was called Limbo.
By John Sayles?
I think it was called Limbo.
Yeah.
I read about it. I wrote it down because I was like, oh, I gotta watch that.
Yeah, and the end, and famously, the ending of that film is that we don't ever see if this family is rescued or not. And I think it's kind of exactly what you were just saying, which is that the entire film has been about their rescue, and the end of the film is kind of in the title. So I personally am all for that because I guess I'm just born this way. Maybe I don't know. I just think I'm interested in reading into films beyond, and whether they're effective or not is a different story. But I think that I like the idea that a film can kind of challenge you with its finale, and it's not just about closing up all the loose ends, which can be emotionally satisfying as well.
And I am all about films that do that, but only the ones that actually treat its audience with a level of respect and show us through the skill of the craft what the movie thinks is important, or what the filmmakers think is important.
It's so tricky. I think in order to make this conversation have any meanings, we have to use specific examples.
I know. I'm going to
because otherwise we're just setting up straw men to like empty straw men.
I mean, I'm not really. I mean, we can go back for me again. I just know that when I see these endings, I had that ending because I didn't think about it right away, and then we talked about it more and it clicked.
Yeah.
Like, it's just look, it's kind of like any. This is now okay. It's kind of like anything. If you this is the dumbest thing, whatever. But like, if
maybe my conversation about specifics might come into play.
Here we go. Yeah, here we go. If you do it well, it's great, and if you don't, it's not. Like, and that's what I'm saying without specific examples. There's no other sort of point. I do want to go back. Actually, write us in onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. Tell us what you think, what open-ended movie you think works, and tell us if there's any that you don't think work. Because I know
don't
when I
write about Inception.
I mean, you can.
You can.
I'm just,
yeah.
Just kidding, I guess.
No, I think that's a fair point. But again, it's within the world of this particular film. I think there's a thematic connection that kind of makes sense.
Right, 100%.
There's a I'm always hesitant to kind of take the director's word as gospel. Like the film, the way to interpret a film is the way you interpret a film, and whether it's effective to you. But I think like his point about the ending, I think really does make sense to me. It made sense to me as I watched it, and it kind of lands now. And I think the other thing that the film kind of pulled me into a rabbit hole is the Washington Post has been. There's this amazing thing about police brutality in America, which is that there is no database or accountability for how many police brutality or police shootings of civilians has been going on. So since 2015, the Washington Post has created a project for itself called the Fatal Force Database, and they have been recording through their reporting, through any social media outlet, through any kind of evidence they can find.
And that's the first database?
That's the FBI don't collect any data points about this. The police don't collect any data points about this. And it makes you wonder about a society where we live in where there's a lack of accountability. And that's what the Washington Post's database is kind of about. So I think if Stefon Bristol's call to action was for us to kind of think about how this, how this continues to happen, how it can happen in sufficiently meaningless situations. Like for example, the death of Eric Garner. As a man selling cigarettes on a corner. Should that result in death?
Right.
I think you should check out the Washington Post database where they've been trying to collect this. The great thing about that is that it is a real user-generated database. You can actually grab the data itself. You can trawl through it yourself as a CSV file. You can kind of find and you can interpret the data yourself.
Yeah.
So I think that's a wonderful call to action. And I think because of that project, the FBI has started collecting that data. But in that note...
Good job, guys.
Yeah. I believe at this point in 2019, the amount of civilian deaths is up to 319.
Since 2015.
No, since the beginning of
reported or found out about.
Since the beginning of January.
Since the beginning of January.
So 372 shootings in 2019
have been fatal.
Fatal shootings of civilians, 992 in 2018. The number gets bigger every year. There's a spike in 2015, 2016.
Well, and we're only, we're not halfway through to 2019 yet. I did read that I wonder if it's from the Washington Post. I didn't see what the source was when I was scrolling, but like it's like 31% of fatal shootings are African American victims, and they make up 13% of the population. Like it's drastically
it's disproportionate in one side. And I think there is a legitimate fear of interaction with police forces that I think is you can see why it happens.
And this movie doesn't shy away from that either. Like that's the other thing too about and this will sort of get into a bit of my final thought. I think is this film takes very hard, difficult, and important topics and wraps it in a time travel Spy Kids bow, and that sounds kind of silly when I put it like that. But again, I think that's one of its greatest strengths. It's going to be seen by people that are not expecting this entirely. It's going to actually do the things that the director said, and sort of like people that aren't, looking for this content will inadvertently find this content because they're looking for the other style that it dips its toes into. I think it's smart to do that. I think it's important to do that. Again, going back to the Disney comment, I think the reason why, and I wish it didn't feel so novel, but the reason it feels so novel is because Disney would never do that. At this current point in May of 2019, Disney would never do that.
The only reason I disagree there is a semantic thing, which is Disney is such a huge conglomerate that it's so multifaceted, and there's so many different parts about Disney. You're just talking about Disney.
I'm talking about Disney as a brand.
G. Yeah.
And if you would have the friggin' castle in front of this movie, it would never happen.
That'd be so weird.
Right? That's what I'm saying. So anyway, sorry, not to sidetrack. I think you owe it to yourself to watch this film. I think it is it's strong in a lot of ways, and ways that will surprise you. If I have any criticism of it, it's just the VFX, and that doesn't matter.
And it's funny that you almost seems like you've come from when we first watched it and you said I didn't like the VFX and I was really frustrated with those to like they are using it as a tool,
because
that's an interesting point.
Yeah, because it did take me out every once in a while, but it did also lull me in at the same time in sort of a different meta way.
Yeah, it's smart.
I do wish, and this is literal stylistic choice from what I like to see in a film for the visuals. They could have done away with all of the VFX and just stuck with the backpacks and a couple pieces of tech on the table, and like it would have worked totally fine. But again, going back to what you just said, Jamie, I don't know if it would have lulled me in the same way, nor gotten people sort of into the space. Like if there's not like the Tony Stark hologram with the VR goggle, like it actually might be integral to how this is presented.
And in a meta way, they start this movie, they don't plan on trying to they don't plan on the grim direction that their journey takes. They are 17-year-olds, 16-year-olds, who invented a time machine for like an expo project, who are really jazzed about that. That's what they want to do. They want to be really smart kids, and the graphics match that tone.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a great moment where things have really gone horribly wrong, and she has to travel back from the past, and she's holding Sebastian's backpack. He's just been killed, and it's through this like crazy graphics portal, but there's just tears coming down her face, and you don't see her eyes aside from that, and it's very grim, but she's still in that portal. It's very interesting.
It's actually that's a kind of I would call that kind of a reference to Spike Lee, whose famous dolly shot kind of thing. That's the moment they kind of throw in the Spike Lee dolly shot, which I love. I think for me, I think this is a great example of genre being used to good effect. Using something like science fiction time travel to sort of great. To kind of point to a social consciousness that I think is interesting. I love the sort of the underlying reality of the fact that this is made by a young second generation Guyanese filmmaker is what makes this authentic, and it's little detail, the little details. Like for example, Michael J. Fox is reading the book Kindred by Octavia Butler, which is about an African American woman who is transported back in time to the slave era, and the kind of the sort of irony of how difficult that period is for anyone in the sort of time travel mythology. I think the thing that's really interesting is that these, I think in most narrative films, time travel and like technological advancement is kind of done in of itself for the progress of your own ability to do things. And in this case, these two kids are just trying to get into college. They're trying to get into they're trying to better themselves, and I think that is a real immigrant narrative. Like it is a second generation essential American narrative of betterment, and it's unique that they're using time travel to get good grades. And it's, to me, the irony is that Michael J. Fox's character, their teacher, gives them a bad grade for not thinking about the ethical implications of their mathematics. And I was like, that's funny, because if someone had kind of invented time travel, are you gonna are you going to suggest that they need to think further about the ethical implications? And I was like, the world is really unfair.
Well, if you're not going to kill Hitler, then I'm giving you a B-.
That's what they got. They got a B+ or something like that, whereas the kid who made the quantum motherboards got an A.
Jamie loved those.
Yeah, the
I
gold
love that they
sprayed.
were gold.
Yeah, the gold sprayed. I loved that character as well.
Yeah.
And again,
yeah.
the sort of little narrative touches, like him giving his abuela a foot massage,
Yes.
and them talking about like this girl that you like and that kind of thing, and is she
A very teen thing.
Yeah, it's just, and then like him going back and putting on this act of like being the cool kid who's trying to get a date. I love those little details. I think they're really fun. They're really cute.
And as the tech goes, I love that they're like in their VR sets. The three of them are standing around a table, and one of them's not wearing it.
And he's like, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, he's just like, what the hell's going on? Like, it's very cute. That was a moment when the tech really worked.
The fundamentally, what makes this film work is it is so effortlessly charming. I think it's lo-fi. It's a young filmmaker finding their feet. I think, but they are being supported in the right ways, and they're being given opportunities. And I think it was our separating art from artist conversation. One of our guests from Your Favors Problematic said, the question they said is, when you support artists that can be doing terrible things, the thing you got to think about is who are the artists we're missing out on, who are not being given opportunities. And what I love about the Netflix model and Spike Lee's endorsement of this filmmaker and this young guy making this film is that we are getting the voice of a filmmaker and a story that wouldn't ordinarily be told and hasn't ordinarily been told. And that's why you should watch this movie on Netflix.
And this is his first major. Like, what's he gonna do? Like, I'm excited
what's
to
next?
see.
Yeah, exactly. What what with the success of this film, what is the next stages for him?
Yeah.
And not to sort of narrow it down into young African American filmmakers, but obviously the last person like this is Ryan Coogler. The other person that Spike Lee has supported is Dee Rees, whose film I think is magnificent that we saw on Netflix last year, Mudbound.
Oh yeah.
So power to the people, I guess, is what I would say. Not being an African American, but like recognizing the push for representation, the push for stories that matter around a community that we don't often see represented in genre films.
Yeah. Well, lady, gentleman, this has been the only podcast about the film See You Yesterday. Jamie, thank you so much for hanging out and talking about this film.
Thanks for having me. It was a great film.
It was super fun watching it with you, and I'm glad that we got to. I often very much, and I mean I quote you on here all the time, but you're constantly challenging me and but actively sort of changing the way I see things, and I very much appreciate that.
Yeah, I wish I could be that guy.
Sadly, you've only done it once or twice. I think the scores are probably
I wear a mask of your face when I tell him those.
You should hear the act. It's a terrible accent she does.
Really?
I will say, Jamie, your New Zealand accent.
You should wear it to bed so that he wakes up next to it.
Garbage.
Kind of like a horse's head in The Godfather. Or something
I do
like
have
that.
a fake mustache that I wore after we watched Justice League, and he was very upset.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Anyway,
You don't want to go for the mustache ride?
Jamie. Wow, Jamie, when you are not being weirdly asked about mustache rides by Shahir, where can folks find you?
I don't know.
It's actually you I wanted to go on the mustache ride, by the way, Matt. So,
Duly noted.
yeah.
You guys are gonna get fan fiction erotica any minute.
We're hoping.
So you can find me on Twitter at JimJam_Walsh, and on Instagram at the same. And that's
those are the places.
Those are the places, I guess.
Love it.
Sometimes I'm online.
You'll respond to fan fiction if people write it, right?
Oh God, guys, send it in. I will print it out and post it and send it to the New York Public Library.
Great.
I won't tell them. It'll be great.
Hope you don't run into John Wick there. Shahir, when you are not traveling back in time to make sure that all films don't have a solid narrative ending. Where can folks find you?
You can find me opening the endings of every mystery at my website, www.shahirdaud.com. That's SHAHIRDAUD. Matt, when you are not fighting straw men in the fields, where can people find you?
Listen, if I only had a brain, you could find me at mattthewkrol.com for my life and works. Also, Skeletor, the number 4, PREZ on Instagram and PSN, and Emperor MSK on Twitter. Also, don't forget to email us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com and tweet at us at onlymoviepod. Let us know what you thought of See You Yesterday. If you think we hit stuff on the head, if you think we missed the entire point, if you think
we should go back in time and redo this entire episode.
Yeah, which
every week.
Every week, we just keep doing it until we get it perfect. But until we hear those things...
See you yesterday?
See you yesterday if you listened before.
See you yesterday?
See you yesterday.
I'm probably not going to be on the next one.
Maybe.
Unless we go back in time.